Welcome to Comics with Dan, and tonight I have here with me another Dan, Dan Waters. You might know him from many books, such as his Sword of Azrael series, or perhaps Homesick Pilots, or even the backup stories in Detective Comics. But today we're here to talk about a little bit of everything going on, but mostly Nightwing. The new Dan has been announced as the new writer of Nightwing following Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo's run. So Dan, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
So I was looking through your first of all, I really do appreciate you coming on, and I I was looking through your Reddit AMA that you did, or I guess it was just last month, right? Um, there was at least
Sounds
one there,
right.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you answered so many questions. It's great to, it's great to, have, writers that are, connected with their fan base, and you have your newsletter and you're active on Twitter and everything. So it's, uh,
I
it's
try. I
awesome.
think I've gone through phases of being good at it and less so.
Yeah.
I appreciate that people want to reach out and talk. It's a privileged position to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's funny because, I forget where I had seen this, but you're and I'm sure you're good friends with Ram V, because you worked with him on the Six Fingers and the what was I'm sorry, what was the name of that one? Six
One
Fingers,
hand and the six
One
fingers.
Hands and Six Fingers. Yeah, yeah. But so he said that he doesn't find it hard to see bad press about himself, but when he finds good press about him, it's hard not to let it get to his head. I mean, does that does that sound like him? And is that something you relate to, or is that more of a him thing?
It's something you have to keep your eye on. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Ram does get a fair amount of effusive press. Um, I saw someone, and I was thinking about this. I was trying to remember who it was. I really wish I could. It might have been Matt Fraction.
Mm,
Someone on a panel at Thought Bubble that I went to. He said that really this job is like the perfect way to turn someone into a monster because you just
mm,
go and you sit in your office for 9 months of the year and you just write stuff that comes into your head, and then you come out to conventions for a few months of the year and people tell you how great you are. So, that's the bad press definitely is a way of keeping you humble. But on the other hand, I
mm.
I feed on rage. So,
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, so I had mentioned earlier your newsletter, which is fairly new, but I've really liked what I've read from it so far. And in one of the posts that you or letters that you had sent out, you touched on the differences between like short form storytelling and long form storytelling. Um, obviously comics can be enjoyed in many ways, but I kind of always look at a comic as you should be able to pick up one issue, enjoy it, and then, expand to the greater story, beyond that. Do you plan on, when you're writing your Nightwing run, is that something you're going to be looking to make each individual issue something someone can pick up? Or is it going to be, this is a long form story. You need to start at the beginning and
yeah, I definitely never
finish at
wanted
the
it to
end?
be something where it's because I think if you lean into that kind of storytelling, you're gonna get convoluted regardless. If it's not pick upable and enjoyable on its own, then it's probably not that enjoyable as part of a grand
Mhm.
thing either. Every unit of storytelling should be kind of uh, accessible and understandable. You should know what the stakes are in the
Mm,
current moment. You should know who the character is and what their deal is. I think there are extremes at either end. There's the sort of there's the sort of like Claremont Wolverine approach where every issue of a four-issue miniseries starts with 2 pages of recap about who Wolverine is and how he's the best at what he does and all of that kind of thing. And I think
Mm,
that's maybe a little
right.
unnecessary. But I think about how I had one issue of Nightwing when I was a kid, literally one issue of the comic written by Devin Grayson, and
Mm,
I and it opens with Nightwing finding a bomb, and it's a whole long chase sequence, and all this kind of stuff happens, and I had enough context to enjoy it while
mhm,
knowing that there was wider story there that I wasn't fully understanding. That made the world feel big, and it made the world feel real. So that's the kind of feeling that I would always like to elicit. So every issue will be relatively um,
mhm,
self-contained, but it is part of the big story. Uh,
right,
and should never detract from the reading experience, even if it's your first comic.
right, right. Yeah, and I saw earlier today, you shared on Twitter the first look into your first issue of Nightwing, and it definitely looks like a big story. I mean, I don't think I recognized any of those villains sitting around that table, um, which I think was probably the point. Um, but yeah, it looks like it is going to be just this big, kind of, epic, and I'm all for that. So um,
I mean, I want to
now,
create a framework in which to tell stories as well. So
yeah,
it's not just going to be 100%. Uh, Here are the people that are going to be here the whole time, and
hmm
you're always going to. It's about giving Bloodhaven a new status quo in which new problems will arise and new
hmm
stories will be told. So I love a one issue story. I love a 2 issue sort of derive off into certain space, and long form storytelling lets you tell those kind of stories, and that's what excites me.
yeah, and so sort of related into that, because I don't know, but just thinking about some of the other works that I've enjoyed of yours. Um, I don't know that you've had an instance where a run of yours has been interrupted by an event comic.
No.
How do you and so, that's always a difficult thing for an ongoing run to deal with because, I mean, even this last Nightwing run got hit with a couple events, and, obviously Tom Taylor's a great writer, he can, make the best out of that, but how do you plan to approach, the possibility of, an event where there's 3 issues that come in that you need to tie into an event, but still wanna keep your story going and keep it engaged.
I mean, it's part of the job, really. There's a certain element of improvisation that's intrinsic to uh, long form storytelling, particularly comics. Um, if you're writing a novel, you can get to the end and then go back and seed all the things that you discovered along the way into the first chapter and look like a genius. But in a comic, if you get to issue 12 and you're like, oh, it would have been great if I'd done that in issue 3. It's too bad. That's on the shelf.
Yeah.
Um, so you're already playing with an element of improvisation, uh, and you can either lean into that or you can fight it. And I think if you lean into it, you'll generally be okay.
Mhm.
Embrace it. Engage with what's being uh, brought to you. Um, find the thematic links. Find the moments of sort of serendipity that will connect what you're doing to what someone else is doing.
Right, right. Yeah. And, I, yeah, I mean, and there's obviously there's good ways and not as good ways to work that in, but, I mean, I guess more just of a question about the industry or how the process works in general, but, like, do you have any kind of foresight into what kinda are advanced, like, in terms of possible interruptions, or is that a little more kinda last minute type thing?
I mean, right now, I think the focus has been on All In
Yeah,
and
yeah.
giving the books their own room to breathe.
Mhm,
Uh, I think the closest we've maybe had is having one or two plot beats in my original outline that ran a little close to what was happening in Batman.
mhm.
Um, but I was like very happy to kind of. I wasn't told not to do it. I was just kind of told this is happening. It's like, all right, no, okay, there's another way I can do this. Which
Yeah,
I actually think has led me into more interesting territory. Um, so yeah, I guess you're sort of vaguely aware that when a summer
yeah.
starts approaching, there might be
There might be something, yeah.
sort of line wide ideas or things that might come in, but we'll see. I
Yeah.
got to interrupt Rom's Detective Comics for Night
Yeah,
Terrors, and
that's
we
right, that's
both
right.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah. And I did really like Night Terrors a lot. I
Yeah, me
thought that it
too.
was a cool idea. I think that there were a few books that was it? I think Green Arrow was only on issue number 3 whenever there was the line wide like halt. So that was I think a little tough for that, but I did really like the
It's,
the book
it's
overall.
Josh's book and Josh's event, so
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. So he was probably like, it's fine. I'll deal with it. That's fine. Yeah, that's true. Um, so the I actually just read Homesick Pilots like this week, right? Because
thank you.
I'd picked it up and I had it sitting over on my to be read, and then I picked it up this week and I really enjoyed it. It was awesome. And there's a ton of punk culture exploration in that book, right? Anti-authority themes are, they're present in both Homesick Pilots, but frequently present in vigilante superhero stories, and themes about finding family in unlikely places, that sort of thing. So there's some relation there between, Bat family books and this punk culture. So like how much of that is something you're pulling from your personal experience, and do you plan on working any of that sort of into Nightwing?
I mean, I think certain names of Homesick Pilots sort of toned down from mine. They're a bit grungy, a bit pop punky. I don't because we weren't certain that people would necessarily connect in the same way to a book about like stenchcore cross punk,
Mm,
which was more my scene in London.
mm,
Um, but those sort of attitudes and those kind of things were something I wanted to write about in that book, and that stage of life, and that's what the stage of my life looked more like. So
mhm.
it was good to sort of get a bit of that off my chest. Um, I do think there's an element of that that's coming into Nightwing, maybe just in challenging the way they go about things. And
Mhm,
we've put out those preview pages, and we're introducing the sort of four gangs of Bloodhaven. Um, and I think the book's really about Nightwing trying to find a different way to approach these guys, other than just sort of kicking their heads in. And
right,
nothing's quite black and white, but it doesn't mean some of it's not very, very uh, extremes.
right.
So Nightwing wants to be everyone's kind of big brother, but not everyone
Mm,
wants a paternal figure looking over
yeah,
their shoulder, especially one who, when the chips are down properly, will kick them in the teeth.
mm, yeah. That's absolutely. Sort of a spring off of that. How much does music play a role in your writing, whether it be inspiring your writing, literally having music on while you're writing, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I kind of need it. Oh, fair, I don't need it, but I definitely use it to get into the zone. It's a lot nicer to sit down and stare at a screen for 6 hours if you've got a good record playing. Like I think I was asked about it on Twitter, and Pretty Hate Machine, Nine Inch Nails. That's been kind of my go-to uh, Nightwing soundtrack.
Mm,
I listen to, I tend to go back to Nine Inch Nails quite a lot for writing anything Batman or Gotham.
mm,
Uh, Nightwing, to me, the first younger record, which is a little more synthy, little poppier, sort of suits that character a lot.
mm.
Angsty as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love music. Um, I've spent the last 3 days with the new Cure song on repeat, pretty much.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, nice. Um, so back to your newsletter. You had a take on continuity in comics
Mm.
in your most recent letter. You had said the joy of these universes to me is their elasticity. There is a foundation of stories underfoot on which to build. So, what are some of Dick Grayson's areas of Dick Grayson's history that have some elasticity, that you can sort of work that in? Because there's obviously the things that that make him who he is that you can't change, but there's lots of areas that you can explore. Um, what are those kind of areas that you're hoping to get into?
I mean, the sort of part and change of it all is an interesting one because that's I posted that, and then inevitably one or two people sort of came back at me with, well, who cares about following the book then if the next person could just turn them into something totally different. And it's like, no, because that's not the job. Why would I bother writing a Nightwing book if I didn't want to write this character with
Yeah,
the core of who he is? It would be a redundant exercise. Go with something else, and I often do. Uh, so I think core of these characters is something that builds over time, and the stories mimetic the good ideas stay, and some stuff falls away. Some sort of experiments and things that don't maybe land as well and just don't feel as core to the character, or maybe someone does end up writing them a little out of character, and that kind of you know drops away a bit. But also people are uh, different at different stages in their life. People go through stuff and get a bit weird. I know I definitely have. So I don't know that you need to jettison any of that fully. It just maybe isn't something that you dwell on the same way.
mm,
I love going back to the sort of early Batman and Robin stuff, and you know, cool stuff from the 40s, and like that stuff has to have elasticity. If you go back to the Silver Age, and there's also a thing about different books have different tones, and
mm,
there's a intrinsic kind of portioning off that you need to do at times to tell a Batman detective story. You can't have Superman sweep into Gotham with super hearing and super
yeah,
invulnerability, because it damages the stakes of the Batman story you're trying to tell, of the kind of detective story you're trying to tell. So those are all factors as well. So it's not about using elasticity to sort of reject things. It's just about, okay, we're focusing on this. This is the kind of things. And so through this lens, maybe these kinds of stories are the ones that we're pulling up out of the soup of continuity.
right, right, yeah. Now, and I mean, I imagine that people get particularly picky about characters that have such a long history, but I also think that when you look back at DC characters, there's just so much that's confusing about canon and not canon, all that stuff about the golden and silver ages. It's like, how can anyone actually even truly keep track of that kind of thing? But some people
I mean,
do.
what I said in my newsletter is that I treat it like memory. It's like someone's memories
Yeah.
that you know memories are extremely fallible. Memories are constructs rather than actual recordings.
Mm,
Something our brain pulls together for us when
yeah.
we recall an event, um, rather than something that just withdraws from a folder. And I think you have to treat it that way because also, I fully agree. Like a character's with this longer continuity, a character who's been around since early mid last century. No one has got all those stories in their head. No one
Right.
has remembered every
Right.
single issue that Dick Grayson has showed up. It's impossible. So that is elasticity also applies to people want there to be this very firm canon, and like, but you can't hold it all in your head. I can't hold it all in my head either.
Right. Right. No, that's exactly it. And I think I saw one of the people that sort of snapped back when you posted that about, like, well, comic readers like canon. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's like, you know, are you gonna let that stop you from enjoying book? Because at this point, I mean, like, comics are just they're such an old medium that you're gonna have things that fall out of canon. It's just gonna happen. And if people let that stop them from enjoying it, then I mean that's on them. But
I mean, I think the thing about that as well is I probably like it to an extent more than most. I want to be able to go back. I love the fact that there's this foundation of these layers and layers and layers of like sediment, these built up stories over almost a century. And so to be able to draw from any of that and all of that and go back and dig into it and go like, all right, there's this weird thing from 1953 that we're going to pull out and re-examine 70 odd years later. Like I love that. I love being able to do that. So yeah, I'm definitely no enemy of it,
Mhm.
and I'm definitely not got no desire to break the toys. I just want to bend them a little bit.
Right, right, exactly. You've written a lot of horror or horror type comics, in your career. Have you had a chance to check out the EC revival through Oni Press with the Epitaphs from the Abyss book that came out?
Haven't yet, but I know I've got a lot of friends doing stories in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's the very first issue gets extraordinarily political, and it smacks you with one side and smacks you with the other side, and it's really crazy. I honestly didn't know if they were gonna really go back to those EC comics. I mean, is that something that the original EC comics, are those things that you've read a lot of or been inspired by, or I
Yeah,
mean, any horror writer?
yeah, yeah. No, I love that sort of pre-Comics Code Authority. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm kind of a little obsessed with Frederick Wood,
Mm,
the guy who came in and sort of campaigned to change the course of the medium
right.
because he was obsessed with the idea that comics were obscene and corrupting the youth.
Yeah.
Um, I love kind of very interested in the concept of obscenity and
Mm,
particularly obscenity in literature. I went to my university professor translated 120 Days of Sodom. Like that's kind
mm,
of my academic background is Marquis de Sade and
mm,
Bataille and these sort of writers who really pushed the boundaries and created and were trying to kind of create a literature of the obscene.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
like writing at the edges of the acceptable is, I think, a the thing that challenges and can change culture.
Mm,
So the fact that comics were seen as such a weapon, I think,
mm.
is quite tantalizing.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is it? I think on the like the homepage of your newsletter, it's like I write the comics that that
Frederick Wertham warned
what
you about it.
warned you about. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was I thought that was funny. I thought that was funny. Um, do you think that your horror background is gonna work its way into Nightwing?
I mean, it opens with an evil clown, which isn't the Joker.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. I did that first AMA back when I was sort of, I think I was still writing issue one, and I was being sort of asked about that, and I was like, well, I don't have to put horror into everything. I
Mm,
do like writing other things as well, and then as I've been writing this first arc, I've realized, okay, yeah, there's a wee bit in there. It's
just a
not
little bit.
it's not there.
Yeah.
Um, it's maybe not the primary thing that's happening, but uh, it's definitely a presence. Because I guess at the end of the day, I am what I am.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, and I've only recently gotten into horror comics because just
Mm,
last year I read Bram Stoker's Dracula for the first
mm,
time, like the novel, and it blew my mind. Just and I've like honestly I've been trying to chase that in comics now. Um,
mm.
I haven't been super successful. There's obviously lots of good horror out there, and I've enjoyed it, but I mean that's one of the all time greats for a reason. But yeah, so
Luana
I'm
Vecchio's Lovesick
mm,
is uh, is the last comic that actually got under my skin, and
yeah,
made me feel like, oh, this is nasty. This is
this is
saying
something
something.
else.
So
Yeah.
that one I highly recommend.
The last one that did that for me was issue 3 of Hello Darkness from Boom Studios. There was it wasn't I don't think it was written by W. Maxwell Prince, the Ice Cream Man guy, but the art was by Martin Morazzo, and it just made my skin crawl. I didn't like that, but I also loved it. So,
Yeah, those are wonderful creators, and Ice Cream Man is a wonderful book.
oh yeah, that's awesome. Um, so obviously Nightwing's part of this DC All In initiative. You've talked a little bit about what characters are going to show up in your book from the Bat family, but which of the other All In books and sort of creators are you hoping to cross over with during your run?
I'm not. I don't know. I'm thinking about crossovers. Definitely not just yet, because
Mhm,
we need to establish our own feet in Bloodhaven.
mhm,
But I'm I'm very excited for the new Green Arrow.
mhm,
I think it's fantastic. I just read the new issue of Batman and Robin,
mhm.
uh, by Philip Kennedy Johnson, and that's fantastic. It's gonna make a lot of people very happy. Um, those are the books that maybe I think are tonally going to end up in the same ballpark
Mhm,
as Nightwing. Like, I think they might be talked about together, at least.
mhm.
I also just read Absolute Wonder Woman, and that's astounding.
Oh,
Hayden Sherman is uh, just he's they're drawing that and dark patterns at the same time. My
right.
Batman book that I'm doing with them,
Yeah.
and I don't know how. Just doing incredible work across two books at the same time.
I mean, yeah, he is incredible. He really is. But so
They
oh yeah. um, so you mentioned Batman Dark Patterns. So that was announced what a few weeks back, and it's you described it as sort of a street level take on Batman with focusing on detective skills. We've seen obviously a lot of different iterations of Bruce Wayne over the years, um, and where he is in his life can really drive what kind of story you can expect. Obviously, like young Batman, old Batman, pre-Robin, post-Robin, that sort of thing. Can you tell us about where Bruce Wayne will be in his life in Dark Patterns?
Yeah, so we sort of said it's around sort of year three, but purposefully not overly defining it, because as soon as we announced the book, people really wanted to slot it into the canon. And is this
Yeah, yeah.
after Long Halloween? Is it before Dark Victory? Is it, all of that kind of thing? And I think once the book starts coming out, people will possibly worry about that a bit less, because really what we wanted to make was just a very classic Batman story, um, like very very old school Batman story. So kind of going back to the early days seemed like the sensible way to do that. In terms of, we just want, it's a stripped back cast. It's Alfred in the Batcave. It's Commissioner Gordon and a few new characters, and that's kind of all we have by way of supporting cast. It's very much about the detective stories that Batman's finding himself in, and it's very much about the city of Gotham. Um, Maybe that's where there's a little more. It's the city in its growing pains, where all of these villains have started cropping up out of the woodwork, and nothing works, and city has no money, and people have come over here, um, trying to make a better life for themselves. There's a lot of New York in it, so they're so the whole city is kind of afraid. And then there is this man dressed like a bat who is sort of acting as a very violent witch doctor, trying to sort of heal the city of its ills. The original plan, the original title I proposed was Wound Patterns, rather than Dark
Mm.
Patterns. But Dark Patterns gave us a little more leeway, a little more interpretations.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm excited for that one. I mean, I know that I'm always looking for street level Batman, right? I mean, I think that that's where the best Batman story. I mean, there's good, sort of out there Batman stories, but the street level I think is just where it's at. So,
I
um,
mean, I love all of it. I love action hero Neil Adams Batman. I love bizarre Morrison Batman. But this is, I would say, taking him back to that pulp route is always kind of my instinct.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so you've said before that you started out wanting to write movies. Um, and sort of were drawn to making comics. What do you see as some of the key differences to writing a good movie versus writing a good comic?
I mean, they're totally different mediums.
Mhm,
I think what drew me to comics was there's a smaller team involved.
mhm,
There's less lead time, in terms of you don't have to spend a year making an hour and a half worth of content, which is, I think, an extremely noble and valuable thing. But I the time where I was really starting to ramp up to take writing very seriously, when I was sort of 18, 19, I don't think I had that patience. Um, and I was reading all those old Vertigo comics that just really were blowing my mind every issue, and just the amount of story and the amount of ideas that could be sort of explored, and how fast the creator's brain seemed to be moving. That I found a real thrill. I found that really sort of visceral. That's what really attracted me to it and made me really want to give it a go.
yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because I spoke with Richard Blake, who he was the creator of Hexagon Bridge from Image Comics, which I don't know if you've had a chance to read that or not, but it's a fantastic book. He
I have.
wrote and illustrated it, but he also said that he started out wanting to make movies and felt that the barriers to getting stuff done there was just so much, which is it's funny to hear because it's a very similar, it sounds like a very similar, experience that you have with it, is that it's, comics, you can get things done. Movies, there's a lot of red tape, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one though because you'll also hear people complain about the same thing with comics.
Mm,
That there's always a barrier to entry to make art. You've always got to bang your head against the wall for a bit before it starts to show cracks.
right, right, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, I mean, that's that's all that I have here, but I'm very excited for Nightwing. And I'm also excited to pick up the other volumes of Homesick Pilots because I read volume one. I can't I don't think you can read the last issue of volume one in Homesick Pilots and then not read the next volume because
It's always the
there's
hope.
for the life of me, and I'm not going to spoil it for any because I want people to read it, but for the life of me, have no idea how you thought of that. I did not see that coming in the slightest. But you look back at it, and it's kind of like it makes somewhat makes sense, a little bit, maybe.
It's always the hope.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I can't take all the credit for that. It's me and Casper's brains very
yeah,
much like smashed together. Casper Wingard, the artist,
yeah.
we've collaborated. He's the first artist I worked with, and we still, whenever we get the chance, we'll do stuff again. I mean, he's doing the power fantasy now with
Hmm.
Kieran Gillen. Um, so God knows when we'll get the chance. He just sent me issue 4 of that, and it was a real gut puncher.
Yeah,
Incredible stuff. So I don't want to interrupt that for
yeah. Just
anytime
let that
soon.
happen.
But yeah, but Casper's one of my favorite collaborators because we very much make stuff that's, think only he and I could make together. It's such a sort of weird mind meld uh,
Mhm.
of both our influences.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on and answering my questions. And Nightwing is in stores October 23rd. Is that the right date? I believe that's the right
Yeah,
date. October 23rd. Nightwing 119. Make sure you grab that. It's gonna be a ride with that puppeteer. He's he's gonna be something, I think.
he's a piece of work.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.